in case.
Woohoo.
Here's Jason.
I don't see Nassim. Is she here?
Correct.
I'm here, but unable to start my video because of a host restriction.
Unable to start your video, Nassim. What the heck? Hold on. Ask to start video. Try now?
Yep.
Perfect. Excellent.
And before we start, if I may, is our closed captioner here?
Yes, I'm here. If you can hand me the pod, please.
Awesome. Okay.
I hate it when you guys talk dirty.
That was before the captioning began. So, Jen, are we all set?
Nope, not yet. Did I do it right, Annette?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Oh.
Right click. No, if you right click in it.
Click on the first box and then go hover over my name. There you go. I see it. Hang on one second.
All right. Are you in as closed captioner then? You're good?
Yeah, just 1 second. I'm going to come in on another computer so I can watch. And then let's see here.
Okay, I just let your second one in.
Okay.
Scott, I'm going to make you co-host as well. And I think we're ready.
Okay, I'm going to mute myself.
Fantastic. Well, welcome everyone to this, let's officially call to order this meeting of the Birmingham Planning Board for Wednesday, July 22nd, 2019. If we could please call the roll.
Scott Klein.
Present.
Robin Boyle.
Here.
Stuart Jeffries. Stuart Jeffries.
He's muted right now. Could we please unmute him?
Here.
Bert Kosek.
Here.
Daniel Scher.
I'm not sure if I'm here or there, but I'm definitely in attendance.
Brian Williams.
Present.
Janelle Whipple-Boyce.
Here.
Jason Emran.
Here.
Nassim Ramin.
Here.
Rachel Hester.
Here.
June Lee. Okay.
We are quorum. Thank you all. Good house tonight. Let's move on to the review and approval of the minutes from July 8th, 2020. Do we have anyone, any corrections or concern? On the board, I see no hands going up, which is testament to our stenographer. Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of said meeting?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Mr. Boyle. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Kozik. Any conversation? All those in favor?
Aye.
Pardon me, let's do a roll call. I did it again. So,
No, what a shock.
shock, I know, but let's take a roll call, please.
Robin Boyle.
Yes.
Bert Kosek.
Yes.
Daniel Scher.
Yes.
Brian Williams.
Yes.
Janelle Whipple-Boyce.
Yeah.
Scott Klein.
Yes.
Stuart Jeffries.
Yes.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So let's move along. Chairperson's comments. We are holding this meeting obviously in accordance with the city attorney's recommendations and that of the city administration in accordance with Governor Whitmer's executive order. Tonight is a study session, a good old-fashioned study session, in that there's nothing else on the docket. So we haven't had one of these in quite a while, board, and hopefully you are as excited as I am to roll up our sleeves and talk land planning and ordinances. So there will be opportunities for those for the public if you are here to comment. I would ask that we will start our conversation, and I will open up a public comment period on each item. If you care to comment, you should use from your center command console at the bottom of the screen the raise hand function, and then Jana and I will both be monitoring to make sure that everybody that wishes to comment will get an opportunity. With that, Jana, do we have any changes to the agenda as published?
We do not.
We do not. Wonderful.
We do not.
So let's dive right in to one of our favorite topics, glazing.
Okay, that's me. Hello again, everybody. Nice to see you as usual. So, brief summary here. I know it's, I think the third time we're talking about this in the last year or so. Just wanted to give a quick synopsis of what we've done up to this point. We started this back in November of 2019. During that meeting, that's when I gave the board the lengthier report, which kind of introduced more of the scientific aspects, if you will, of it, the nitty-gritty of glass. And it was super exciting, I know. And that's where I first introduced the idea of reflectivity to go along with our visual light transmittance calculations. So after that, we met on January 8th, 2020. During that meeting, we brought back a little bit of the information that the board had requested, such as some information about how glass could differ between manufacturers. Long story short, we didn't really gather any information that would say that glass from one manufacturer X would be any different than glass from manufacturer Y. Additionally, we confirmed some of the visual light transmittance calculations that were originally dug up when the glazing and clear glazing definition were created. So this time around, I edited some of the proposed ordinance language. The important bits really lie in the definition of clear glazing. Just so we all recall, 80% VLT is how we defined clear glazing. I have since adjusted that to 66% with a reflectivity of 15% or less. That 66% number, you may wonder, seems pretty specific. It is not arbitrary. The reason we selected that is in talking with our glass professionals that we've been talking with, 66% is the lowest VLT that you can get with security glass. And that's also low-E coatings and stuff like that. So that's where we wanted to come in tonight. Just so you're all aware, I did secure Craig Hadfield from Guardian Glass. He was kind enough to offer to join us tonight. He's the architectural design manager for Guardian Glass. I was unable to answer some of the really technical questions that you had last time, and he would be more than able to do so. So he's here. I'll pass it back to you, Chairman Klein. If you have any questions for me, great. If you have any questions for Craig, even better. Whatever you need.
Great. Well, listen, I'm enthused that Mr. Hatfield from Guardian Glass was willing to join us. I wonder if he might be willing, very briefly, to just jump in without trying to put you on the spot, Mr. Hatfield. Help us understand just briefly a little bit about this VLT and reflectance and how, the intent of our ordinance was obviously to try and make glass on the lower level see-through so people could see activity in and out. And just, the changes that Nick has outlined, are we, from a technical perspective, still aligned with that intent, based on our thought of what "quote unquote" clear glass means? Sure. And Nick, can everybody hear me? Okay, I feel like I'm echoing a little bit.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Hatfield.
Yeah, Nick, thank you first off for inviting me and the board. I appreciate your time this evening. Yeah, you are, because when you look at clear glass, a basic insulated glass unit, which to understand that is two panes of glass hermetically sealed with a spacer between them. you're starting off right there about 80% visible light transmittance. The problem is that your solar heat gain, so the amount of heat that is absorbed through that unit into the building, is extremely high. So by adding a low E coating, like for reference, a couple of buildings around town, the Brookside development, the Daxton Hotel, those type of buildings, by adding a basic low E coating, you're dropping your VLT down by about 12 points or so, but you're giving the protection inside the building right around a 0.38 or 0.39 solar heat gain, which is saying that you're blocking out a lot of solar energy coming through that particular glass makeup. The other thing too is when you take a clear unit with 80% VLT, you're averaging anywhere from 15 to 16% reflectivity. So when you're walking up to the reflective out number, you're looking you're reflecting in 16% of whatever you're seeing from outside. So you almost have a medium, what we call a medium reflective glass. Now, the glass that Nick was talking about with that 68 to 66 VLT, now you've taken that number down from your reflective in to out around 11%. So you're actually getting a little bit less visible light, but a lot less reflectivity on that glass as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. Board, are there any questions for either Nick or for Mr. Hatfield? Mr. Scher.
Hi, Mr. Hatfield. I've got a couple of questions for you. First
Yeah,
is,
definitely.
when we use either a percentage attached to VLT or a percentage attached to reflectivity, is that industry standard, or do different manufacturers calculate that differently?
No, all manufacturers calculate that number the same way. So in order to get it approved by the National Fenestration Association, it has to go through the same calculation methods. That's why that number, that's 66 that Nick was talking about, what that gives us is a range of glass types. You can have anywhere from 68 to 69%, but then if you add in a laminate or a safety type glass, so laminated glass, that's where you reach about that 66%. So that's really what that number kind of falls in line with a very efficient product, but also a safety product as well.
So from the point of view of the average person who's walking down the street, what's the difference between 66 and 80 in percentage terms, seems significant. Is it visually readily distinguishable, or is it the sort of thing that the average person wouldn't notice a difference?
It depends on the person, how well they look at glass and how easy they are to look through glass. But in most cases, I wouldn't think people would know the difference between 68 and 80% glass difference.
And at what point in that percentage VLT would you say that the glass is no longer clear?
In the 40 to 50% range.
And so if you're down there, if it's, I'll use the word obscured. I'm not sure if that's the right word. Are those simply harder to see in? They look darker inside?
They can look darker from outside in, or sometimes it can look darker, from the inside out too. It just really depends on the glass and how it's manufactured. If it has a tinted glass makeup to it, sometimes that can be harder to see in. And sometimes, depending on the light element from the back end or from the front, that can change it as well.
And I assume then that tinting would reduce the VLT number.
Correct. Normally in a larger capacity. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem at all. Glad to help.
Great. How about anybody else? Mr. Kozik.
Mr. Hatfield is the most popular guy in town because I went to our architectural spec rater, and that's who she recommended I speak with. So poor Craig, I talked to him this afternoon. I talked to him 3 months ago, and so kudos to Nick. I support all the work that you've done, and I think you're spot on. A couple of things that maybe Craig, Mr. Hatfield, should speak to as so the library recently built, not occupied yet, I don't think. So that meets the standard. The Daxton meets the standard. The Pearl meets the standard. Two of them are not occupied yet, or the lights aren't on. So, what's the color of the glass, or what's the, how much are you able to see into the space? You can't really tell at this point. But the the library clearly has sort of a green tint to it. So as you and I spoke, by creating this standard doesn't necessarily mean that all glass in Birmingham at the storefront is going to have a green tint to it. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, and so a couple good examples. If you take the glass makeup in the Brookside development and the glass makeup in the Daxton Hotel, the exact same coatings on the glass. The difference is the Brookside development. Bert, that's the project I couldn't remember the time we talked. That is a basic clear glass, and then the Daxton Hotel is a low iron glass. So the difference is that we're taking the iron out of the glass a little bit to make it a little bit clearer. The visible light transmitting difference between that, the Brookside development is 68% visible light. The Daxton Hotel is about 70% visible light. And it's just simply by taking a little bit of iron out there, it clears up the glass a little bit.
Okay, but we're not suggesting that gets mandated as part of this.
No, and that's a good thing that they could have the option to do either one. If they wanted to be a little bit clearer, they could always go with a low iron glass. The difference is low iron glass does have a tendency to cost a little bit more than clear glass would.
Okay, and as part of the ordinance, have you seen what was being proposed, the 66% minimum in reflectivity? As you and I spoke, you referred to it as the outside reflectivity.
Correct.
Should that be clarified as opposed to the inside of the glass, obviously?
I think both numbers are really important because you can rate glass as being reflective out and reflective in. So I think it's important to make sure that both of those numbers keep about the same. Because if you have a reflective in that's really heavy, then it almost mirrors itself from the inside out. So you're almost looking at yourself in a mirror in a way. So I think it's important to keep both numbers about the same.
Okay, and then should there be anything else? When we first talked about this months ago, you mentioned maybe even to suggest no tint. Is there? So you understand the intent of what we're trying to accomplish here, right?
Definitely.
Transparency. So how can the bad guys or these crazy architects who are trying to do crazy things, how do we protect ourselves? Is there anything else that we need to add as part of this language, such as no tint?
I think keeping, especially for the basic storefront or the first floor applications, as no tint, because there's no real way to hit that code that you guys are coming up with if you add a tinted glass and a low E coating together.
Okay. So we don't have to add the words no tint. It's just inherent in meeting the spec.
I would always say put it in no tints just to protect yourselves.
Okay. So no tints, hitting the numbers we're talking about. Should there be any reference to the low iron?
I don't think you'd have to say no, low iron in there. I mean, it would still, that same coating that's distributed from us and other manufacturers, if they did low iron, it would still be well above that code number that you would need.
And that's quite a bit more expensive, right?
It ranges, yeah, it can be, but it definitely will be more money than a clear glass would be. But I think the important thing for everybody to understand that it still gives a lot of transparency inside the glass, but it also gives the building owner some protection on his heating and cooling as well.
Anything else, Mr. Kozik?
Nope, I'm good. Thanks, Craig.
Yeah, no problem.
Boys.
I just wanted to ask a little bit more about the low iron. I had an occasion on a project to choose between regular glass and low iron glass, and there was a significant green color not present in the low iron glass. Now, I mean, would you agree? Is that typical that the regular glass has much more of a green tint to it, kind of like what we're seeing at the library right now, versus low iron is no green?
There's a couple things to look at when you look at the library. Clear glass does have a little bit of a greenish look to it because iron, when it's heated in with other sands and things like that, it does have a tendency to have a little bit of a green hue. What's going on with the library is that there's 3 layers of silver on that glass as well that gives it protection. And so when you add multiple layers of silver, it has a tendency sometimes to add a little bit of a greenish hue to it. So that's what you're seeing there. But in
So
most,
if the library used low iron glass, would we still be seeing that green tint?
a little bit, but not as heavy.
Not as heavy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nick, did you have a question?
Nick?
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify, and I think Craig, let me know if I'm wrong, but I think the library came in at 62% VLT as well, which maybe.
Correct. Yeah. So it was a little bit less than the code would be.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
If I could just ask
Jana.
Mr. Hatfield to potentially just comment, when you were in and you gave us a little demonstration in our office way back when, between the VLT and the reflectivity and the differences that those two things make with regards to being able to see through. Did you want to maybe touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. Reflectance in glass is something that's always inherently there. I mean, it's going to be something that we can never fully eliminate it. There's a couple of different ways to lower that or raise it up. The first way is by adding a coating on glass. You can either raise that number up or lower it down. With more protective glasses like the one we're talking about here, in that case, it's going to lower that number down. With reflectivity, initially it was put into glass in the early conceptuals, like when you see a lot of bronze buildings and things like that. They added reflectivity to that glass because that was the easiest way to cool off the buildings because of the low E coating and the technology that was there currently. So by adding different silver contents, that's starting to help lower down that reflectivity number, but also give you better protection on your solar heat gain coefficient as well. But really what we're trying to do here by keeping that number at that 15 or less, it's giving you guys protection to be able to see inside those stores, but also give that building owner some protection on their heating and cooling costs as well.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board or any conversation you'd like to have? I think, Nick, you've done an excellent job, and Jana, your help too. And Mr. Hatfield, thank you so much. Nick,
Yeah,
do you have a comment?
Yeah. So again, I also wanted to say thanks again, Craig, 1,000 times thank you. He was integral in helping me study for this, but I forgot to mention when I outlined my report that for public purposes, I failed to include the sample motion language, and I just wanted to mention that the sample motion language was to set a public hearing on August 28th, Jana? 26th. To review the changes to these sections of the zoning ordinance, Article 4, Article 9.
Great.
Article 3.
We have the language.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Just for
I
public,
sent it to them.
for the video purposes, we did recommend that was the
Perfect.
action.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, board. Seems like we have some excellent work here. If I might say, and perhaps the only hanging chad, to use perhaps an ill-timed expression, would be whether or not we want to talk about low iron, as Ms. Poppelboyce discussed. But everything else seems quite well done. So, comments, questions, thoughts, Mr. Kozik?
Mr. Hatfield, you're still on the.
Mm-hmm.
So low iron. Do all your competitors? I mean, a lot of buildings in Birmingham have 20-foot wide storefronts, and a Mod PA kind of outfit, and somebody breaks the glass and you got to replace it. So it's not all the Daxton in those type of projects. Is if low iron became part of the standard,
Mm-hmm.
Would that preclude anybody from being able to find glass quickly to replace glass or build new buildings? Can you speak to that?
No, it shouldn't at all. The good thing about this code that Nick has kind of come up with these guidelines, I mean, it gives you options. It's just not based on a Guardian product only, that all of our competitors can meet this code with their coatings, and also low iron is available with pretty much every one of those manufacturers at any given point.
Do you know of any other zoning ordinance that requires low iron as a standard?
Never heard of one specifically saying it has to be low iron. it's always left up to the building, normally to the building owner to declare if they want to do low iron or not, just because of the cost factor.
Right. To Mrs. Boyce's point, if all of Birmingham ended up looking like the library, I think a library is fine. It establishes the architecture in some ways. I don't know if that was the vision for the architect, but it does have sort of a green tint to it. But if every storefront in Birmingham became like that, I think that would not be good. So does that risk exist? Do you, I like the low iron because it's just colorless.
Yeah.
So if that could become part of the standard without putting people out of business or, making only one glass supplier in the planet to be able to supply it, that might be a good thing to do.
Definitely. I think we have to, Nick, did you have a question real quick?
Yeah, if you don't mind me sneaking in here.
No, you're fine.
I'm curious too, if we go into the low iron conversation, while you're thinking, Craig, about the enforceability of it, if we required glass spec sheets or specs on that glass, would I be able to look at that and see low iron somewhere, or would I have to look up whatever glass they bought and research what kind of makeup it is, or would it be easily available on a standard spec sheet for glass?
So to answer your question, Nick, real quick, it should say it on whenever you get a submittal sample from the architect. It should say on there what the glass makeup is. If it has low iron glass, for instance, ours is ours is ultra clear. One of our competitors is Opti White, so that it should always say on there what the glass type is, and then it should say the coating after that as well.
Okay.
So, Bert, to kind of answer your question as far as how green it's going to look, I think with this code, the library would kind of be an exception to the rule. I mean, that glass would not be acceptable under this new code. I think we'd really need to go look at the Brookside development, because that's the glass that Nick is really talking about that would be acceptable under the new code. And that one there should not look as nearly as green as the library should, because that's a different coating. So when you look at coatings, there's, the one that's on the library is at what we call a triple silver, so 3 layers of silver. The one on the Brookside development is only a double silver, so you have less silver on there. So you're not quite getting the performance, but you're allowing a lot more light into the system, but have less likelihood of seeing that green hue that you're worried about.
But other than the cost, why not specify or require low iron?
That's about, I would say the cost of it is probably the biggest contributor. And, I guess not the enforceability of it, but the justification from going from 68% visible light to 70% and the cost factor might be difficult for some of the smaller business owners too, in a way.
Okay.
Anybody else on the board have any thoughts, questions, part of the conversation? Mr. Scher.
My thought is at a time when we're thinking about looking at incentives to help retailers in particular who are struggling with coronavirus, given what seems to me the relative difference, I wouldn't think that we want to specify something that's going to cost more.
And Mr. Hatfield, this criteria that we're establishing, it almost needs to be that to meet the requirements of the energy code, right?
The low iron or the clear glass?
No, the visible light transmittance.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, this glass would be the current energy codes that's out there. This glass type, this super neutral 68 that we're kind of talking about here, the coating, that would meet the current energy codes that you would have to have.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, board, what we would like to do? More conversation, or we think we're ready to push this to a public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, can I just mention a couple other things that have nothing to do with glazing, but they have to do with this section. I'm looking at Article 3, Section 3.04. item number 4, where it talks about, I just wonder, is this an opportunity to clean up some other stuff? When it talks about, I think the second sentence says the wood or metal armature, structural elements to support canopies or signage of such storefronts shall be painted, fine, bronze, or powder coated. So when I read bronze, I thought, did it have to be bronze in color or made out of bronze? You know, should we just strike that and say painted or powder coated? And then this has come up a lot in previous conversations. If I look at item number 7, windows shall not be blocked with opaque materials or the back of shelving units or signs. So is it in the ordinance, or is it sort of is there some standard that says, yeah, so blocked, how far back can I put a shelf unit? Or, we've talked about Lululemon in the past and the pharmacy building. Is this the opportunity to clean that up and say for 3 feet or 10 feet, or are we covered somewhere else in the ordinance? That's a question to you, Jenna.
There's nothing in the ordinance right now that says it has to be back so many feet from the window. The only place we have that is with regards to signage. If their signage is 3 feet back, it's not considered outside, it's inside. But with regards to windows and the back of material of shelving units and such, we don't have a number there. I think there would be some value in putting one there. I guess off the top of my head, I don't know what the right number is, but I think about particularly Save On Drugs, which is now CVS, I think, and then across the street, the Walgreens, whereas the Walgreens, when they came in, we made them put all of their shelving away from the windows so that you can actually walk along the window. And then Save On across the street has all the shelves pushed right back up to the windows. So is 3 feet enough? Probably not, because that's not a usable aisle width, say, for somebody to walk down. And then you're just moving the shelves 3 feet away and you're still seeing the back of them. So I don't know. I think there might be some value in that, but I don't know what the right number would be.
All right. And then what does blocked mean if I put, 60% of the opening is filled with mannequins with dresses and shoes or something that you're displaying things. So I don't know. I just put out the question to the group. See what their thinking is. Maybe it's not been an issue. It's occasionally kind of comes up, and for the most part, everything's fine. But
mostly it's come up in the past before we added that section. And so we have a lot of these folks that are grandfathered in that we get complaints about from time to time.
Right. I guess Whole Foods would be another one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Nick?
And again, it kind of, in my experience, I've been here for 3 years, it's come up maybe 4 times. And it feels like we've done a good job internally of, keeping an eye out for that kind of stuff. But if we were, I might just to say that it might be interesting to add like a vertical height limit, because it's going to be hard. If we're going to put a horizontal limit away from the window, most people are probably going to make that an aisle, and then it's going to be 6 feet, and then it seems to clear itself up without having to write up new language. But I do find it interesting, with floor to ceiling windows, could you put a riser there, for a mannequin, as you said, Burke or Bert? And could we go with a vertical limit, how high you can go? Just some thoughts.
Or not. Leave it as is. And
Ms. Wilberforce.
Well, a couple things. I'm not still sure I'm set on the low iron piece of this. I do sort of fear people using the clear glass that's not the low iron and ending up with a lot of green windows downtown. I'd like to know just how much more percentage-wise expensive it is to require low iron. And one thing I wasn't clear on, is Brookside low iron or not low iron? Do we know the answer to that?
Brookside is just basic clear glass. It's not low iron.
So those coatings, the double silver that they use there, it doesn't have the same green tint as the library. So that's
correct. Yeah, the greenish hue that you're seeing there.
So I feel better about that. Is there? Wait, I think I know the answer to my question. Okay, so there's that's still in my mind, and then as far as some of the things Bert was pointing out, I think he did find a couple things in here, like under 4, where he said painted bronze or powder coated. It does make sense to me if we're working in this section of the code that maybe bronze doesn't seem like an appropriate word to have in here, so maybe we strike that while we're working on this. And then I really do like the idea of having a certain number of distance of feet from the window back, rather than just saying windows shall not be blocked. And something that would be a typical aisle with like 5 or 6 feet seems to make a lot of sense to me. So I'm not sure why we wouldn't want to include that while we're cleaning up this section. So.
Other thoughts on the board? Nick, you have a comment?
Yeah, and I just wanted to, for the purpose of conversation, there are 3 examples I can think of right off the top of my head. Places like Gazelle Sports, the Lululemon example that was already stated, and like Found Objects that all have things in the window, products in the window. What do we think about it? Is that technically blocking the window, or is that just displaying retail goods? Do we want to get into? Well, I personally don't want to get into percentages with that kind of thing, but I just wanted to gauge your idea if we're going to have to revisit this, that type of thing, and whether or not we consider that blocking the window.
Good question. Ms. Wilberforce?
It's a great point. I mean, Gazelle Sports, for example, looks fantastic.
Yeah.
And I would love to see other stores look like that. And they're very close to the window with their merchandise.
Yeah,
so,
it's very low key. It's not very meaty. But
a really good point. And then I look at things like the CVS right there in town, and it's horrible. All the windows are blocked, and it's terrible. It's so unfortunate. So yeah, I don't know how we fix that, of course, but it's a good point, Nick.
And I'm happy to explore it, by the way. I'm happy to explore all this stuff. So.
Any other comments from the board members? I mean, maybe I'll add my 2 cents is that I do completely understand the thoughts raised. I do wonder offhand, however, if we're getting into a perfection getting in the way of good scenario here a bit. I mean, I think that the glazing and the glass standards that we've updated here make a great deal of sense. And I share Ms. Whipplevoice's unease about the low iron. I'm not sure I've made a decision yet. I wonder aloud whether we may want to put that into the ordinance language if we're interested in moving forward to a public hearing, knowing we can always remove it next time, as opposed to trying to add it, which would be more restrictive and therefore force us to adjourn a public hearing. My 2 cents might be to leave the rest of the ordinance with regard to the storefront windows, blockage, etc., as is, and not derail our efforts, but certainly not set in stone in that opinion. Mr. Williams.
Well, I think there's a big distinction between display items for sale and shelving.
Right.
So it strikes me if we want to deal with that issue, we've got to come up with some language before we schedule the public hearing. Maybe it's delayed a month, but
sure,
if we're going to do it, we got to get it right. And I'm not really interested in penalizing somebody who wants to show goods for sale in the window as opposed to a shelf, or worse yet, what Whole Foods has, which is in some sense garbage.
So that's a good point. So Nick, Jana, I mean, the ordinance 3.04E7 says windows shall not be blocked by opaque materials or the back of shelving units or signs. I mean, how can, unless they're grandfathered in, how can anybody put a shelf up in front of their building, in front of their window now?
Well, I guess that's where we use a little common sense, I guess, when we're approving these applications. So you take an example, Save on Drugs or CVS, where they have literally the back of the shelf. You can't see any of the product. You see the back of the shelf, period. Whereas, say, Gazelle, they might have a clear glass shelf with a couple pairs of shoes on it midway up their display window, and then they have racks with hangers above and below, and they display the merchandise so that you can see it from the outside. So when we work with people on that type of display, and we do regularly, we say, you know, you can have your product displayed in the window, but not the back of the fixture, not a set of shelves that's going to block all view inside the store. And so they have, for instance, just the small rack systems that they're just one line, and then they have all the hangers on them, and they're displayed outward and inward, so that when you're walking down the street, you do still see some of what's inside the store. And I think that's attractive on the one hand too, but as you know, it can get out of control pretty easily. But another way to do it is just to move the shelves all the way back from the windows, but that does then take away that display. We've had this come and go on a couple of different stores, and we just really work with them until we kind of work within the confines of this general language until we.
So, Jana, if I could ask, I mean, before I go to Mr. Jeffries, I mean, is the ordinance enforceable? I mean, do you feel that you're able to look at, if a new CVS came to town, brand new, not covered by any grandfathered approvals, would we not be able to tell them that they could not put the back of any shelves against their window?
Yeah, we could tell them they can't put their shelves up against the windows, yes.
And it would be a violation of their site plan if they did.
Correct. I feel like it's general enough that we've been able to work with it since we added it. To your comments, you know, could we make it a little better? Maybe, but I think it's going to take a lot of thought and research, maybe, because what we have here is working fairly well right now.
Mr. Jeffries, you had your hand up.
Yes. I would just say, while I think this is a great thing to talk about, the material that we got and prepared for wasn't on this topic. And I'd like to just see us push forward on what we've already been studying for quite a while, and then revisit this one. And we just did our action list. Maybe if we think this is something we need to do, let's put it back on. But I think it's different enough, and we don't have the background here. And sometimes that just means you go in circles and then end up having to have the conversation for real later. So,
good point, Mr. Kozik.
And I'd be fine with that, but as someone that has to read these ordinances and design buildings around them so that they conform. And furthermore, as you tour through our town, as you are familiar with our ordinances, and you see so many people breaking the rules, you know, because it's hard to enforce, you know, even the statement that says windows shall not be blocked, you know, it says, you know, back of shelving units or signs. The ordinance actually allows you to put signage on windows to a certain percentage. I don't remember what it is, Jana. So again, we have a contradictory thing, and it just drives me nuts. Where we have the opportunity to clean something up,
but you can block the entire window with a shade.
You can.
You can.
Yes, yep. You can.
All right, let's just talk about glazing and put it on the list. So, I mean, in the end, it comes down to, frankly, Lululemon doesn't bother me. It's very artfully sort of done, and it's something to look at, you know. So I don't find that as a negative, but there's certainly lots of other stuff around town that people don't have the same degree of design sensitivity. So, so I'd be, as Mr. Jeffrey said, we want to go ahead and make this about glazing today and put this on the list with 100 other things to sort of clean up. I'd be fine with that.
All right, board. So, I mean, it seems like we've talked about this a good amount tonight as well as in the past. I mean, it seems to me we've got a decision to make. Number one, we're either going to push this to a public hearing with or without a low iron rider, as we shall say, or we're going to table this and come back to it with further discussion related specifically to shelving units and opaque materials, etc. I mean, I think you've heard a few of us and our thoughts. I'd like to suggest that this is something we should probably move forward, if I'm not being too draconian there. But is there any conversation or thought, or is there a thought to a motion one way or the other with regard to this item? Do we feel that we're close to a public hearing here? Ms. Wilberforce?
Yeah, I think so. I'd be happy to make that motion. I would, per your suggestion, like to add the piece about low iron so that we can have a little more time to look at that. And then should we decide at the public hearing that it's not necessary, we can more easily remove it than and not be able to add it later if that's acceptable.
Before you make your motion, Mr. Kozak, comment on that?
And furthermore, I think Mr. Hatfield said adding the words no tint would further clarify things.
Yes, good point.
And where are you proposing these changes? To the definition of clear glazing?
I would think so, yes.
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
Mr. Hatfield, while we have you, what would be the terminology with regards to low iron? Would we say low iron content?
Just really low iron glass would probably be the best way to put it. Low iron, yeah, just putting low iron glass.
Glass.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. So with that, seeing the other hands with Ms. Whipplevoice, are you interested in moving this forward?
I was just looking for some motion language here. That might be in Jana's edition. Okay, correct. Found it. Let's see. This is for the August 26th meeting. Okay. Make a motion to set a public hearing on August 26, 2020 to consider zoning ordinance amendments to Article 3, Section 3.04E, Article 4, Section 4.90A, and Article 9, Section 9.02 to change the clear glazing standards and definitions to relax the visual light transmittance requirements and add reflectivity requirements.
We have a motion by Ms. Whipplevoice. Do we have a second?
I will second the motion.
Seconded by Mr. Kozak. Any conversation at the board level?
Are we adding the no tint and low iron glass to the?
Yes, that was, I believe, the intent. Correct, Ms. Whipplevoice?
Yes.
I think the motion should reflect that.
Okay, let's do that then. So,
I don't think we need to get the specific language at this point, but I think the motion should.
So, Ms. Whipplevoice, you want to add reference to low iron and to no tint being added to definitions under Article 9.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kozak, you're fine with that?
Yes.
Excellent. So I will do what I said I was going to do a few minutes ago and go to the public. Is there anyone? I don't know that we have any public tonight, but if there's anyone from the public that wishes to comment on the motion or the comment or the topic, please use the raise your hand feature. As I said, I don't know that I see anybody in the participant window that is not a member of our esteemed little group here. So seeing nothing, we'll bring it back. Could we please call the roll?
Janelle Whipple-Boyce?
Yes.
Bert Kozak?
Yes.
Daniel Scher?
Yes as to moving to a public hearing, but opposed to mandating low iron glass.
Brian Williams,
Yes.
Robin Boyle,
Yes.
Scott Klein,
Yes.
Stuart Jeffries.
Yes.
Excellent. Motion unanimous. Thank you very much. Let's move
Well,
on to.
Chairman Klein,
Yes.
I don't know if that's a unanimous motion since the low iron was part of the motion, so I think we would log Mr. Scher as a no.
Okay. Fair enough. Mr. Boyle?
Yes, in light of Nick's comments, I think it would be really helpful for the next time if we can get comparative costing, because I do think there's an implication there. If we are layering additional costs onto development, so if you could reach out to your industry contacts and get real costings, it would be very valuable for me anyway.
Yeah, great point, Mr. Boyle. Thank you. And I'd also like to say, Mr. Hatfield, thank you so much for your contributions, not only to the staff and they're putting this together, but tonight for the time you've spent answering our questions and helping us through this. Thank you so much.
Glad to do it. And again, thank you for the invitation. And if I'm leading into that meeting on the 26th, if you guys have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Nick has my contact information, and so does Bert. So if you guys have any questions leading to that, please let me know.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks again.
No problem, guys. Thank you.
So let us move forward into item number 2, solar panels.
Okay, me again, what Brian's been waiting for. Jumping at the bit here. So this is round 2 of the solar panel discussion. Again, just a brief synopsis of the history. The original ordinance was adopted in 2009. In May of last year, the board brought up the potential for relaxing some of the what we felt were a bit onerous standards for solar panels, as the technology has evolved quite a bit to be more stylish, a little bit more normal, and a little bit more popular. So we first talked about it on January 8th, 2020. I presented a little bit of revised ordinance language. The basic feedback we got was positive. The board wasn't so sure about ground-mounted solar arrays at this point, and there were some comments about adding requirements for anti-reflectivity to reduce glare, and to make sure that all of the hardware, the frames, the mounts match the color schemes. So what I've brought back today is our changes reflecting exactly that. I removed the ground-mounted solar array language and simply I kept the kind of bookmarked the section because there was some talk about potentially looking at it in the future, studying it further. But for now, I bookmarked the section and just simply stated that they are not permitted at this time. I added in 1F the anti-reflective coating requirements. That was the change, and then based on Janelle's comments for the wind energy facilities, I removed the single-family zoning districts from that, but I left in the multifamily and higher intensity transitional zones. So I wouldn't mind, please, if you guys discuss that. I just left it in there for conversation, really. Multifamily can get high enough to where those wind energy facilities may work. So other than that, there was really no updates. Very simple. Chairman Klein, back to you. Open for questions. Let me know.
Great. Board, any questions for Nick? Any conversation? Seems like, Nick, you've done a great job taking our comments from last time. Any discussion? So, very few hands.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Boyle.
This is really for Nick. There's currently adverts running on the TV that have exterior wall-mounted batteries for storage of alternative energy is the big issue. And I know that companies are into this, and as these images on TV are I don't know whether they're real or fake. Assuming they're real, does our ordinance cover the location of said batteries, wall-mounted?
Great question, and I did include that, and I believe in just reading it here. I said associated electrical equipment such as meters, charge controllers, inverters, storage batteries, or similar ancillary equipment. That's all allowed. Because we did see, I think, with one of the more recent, we had a Tesla Powerwall in with one of the more recent solar panel applications. So in the last point, G, all ancillary equipment installed in conjunction with roof-mounted solar electric systems is permitted on the side or rear building facades only. Storage batteries shall be installed in the interior of the building only. That's what I have so far. So right now, to sum that up, if you're going to have a battery, we require it to be inside. There are some ordinances in our neighboring communities. If you manage to thumb through some of that, it was kind of mismatched or jumbled a little bit, but some allow storage batteries, but most of them seem to be alluding towards more of a mobile battery, say a car battery, that style. And they really said once the battery's full, it must be removed or, and placed in a different location. If you're interested in allowing these, and admittedly, I don't know if they're even able to be placed outside, but if you're interested in allowing them to be stored outside on the exterior wall as well, I would be happy to look into requiring some sort of screening or box that has to be around it. So to answer your question, yes, but it's up to you if you want to elaborate on it.
Like as the chair said, I don't want to pick over every word and every nuance here and get in the way of doing something which I think we've knocked around for a while and getting it and moving forward. It just strikes me that these things might be connected, but here I am again, trying to get a little bit too engaged with this. I'm just reading through it again just to make sure that we're probably all right.
Other comments? Ms. Wigglesworth.
I'm working on a project right now that has a solar roof in a different community, and their Tesla battery is about 5 feet tall by 5 feet deep and maybe a foot or 18 inches wide. It's going inside the home.
Okay.
But my point is, I think we might be cautious about allowing them to be outside because I think there are a lot of different sizes and they could possibly be very large. This one I know of is huge.
That's really
good. So what is there a definition for ancillary equipment?
Good question.
So I didn't define it necessarily, but I kind of rattled off a list, if you will. I said such as meters, charge controllers, inverters, storage batteries, or similar ancillary equipment. I kind of left it open-ended. So although it's not defined, I did outline some of the standard ancillary equipment that comes with solar panels.
Yeah, I think that's a little open-ended in my view. I think it's one thing to have solar panels on the roof. I think it's another thing, if you're the neighbor, to have ancillary equipment on the side of the house right next to you. And that's what the language of G permits, with the exception of storage batteries.
Would you be interested in, are you saying you'd rather require it on the rear only or require some sort of screening or box?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I guess it depends on the house, and the location of the house and the location of the neighboring property.
Well, and the size of the equipment, right?
Yeah, I mean, but as of now, this language is pretty broad to permit things outside the house.
Well, if you do consider moving it to the rear only, of course, most single-family districts have a 30-foot rear setback, so that gets it further away from the neighbors and inside the backyard, as opposed to the side where you may have only 5 feet from your property line.
Yeah, I think side is bad, really bad, particularly in Birmingham, because we've got so many narrow lots.
Do we know what it is exactly? I mean, I saw what you wrote, but like maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just a connection through the wall into the house to the battery.
An electric meter. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, I would hate to, if it's only an electric meter, or if it's only some kind of a small connection box on the outside of the house, I would hate to limit it to the back because it may, prevent someone from being able to do this. But of course, if it's something gigantic, we don't want it in a 5-foot setback on one side of the house. That would be not good for the neighboring property. So I guess if we knew more about what it is, we could probably decide that pretty easily.
And I think I could find either internet research or pictures of our recent solar panel approvals and see what kind of equipment they've got. I know I've got the specification sheets that have that equipment on it and detail that equipment, but I'd be happy to provide pictures and specs.
Stuart, Mr. Jeffries.
So it felt really empowering to have an expert on glass here when we were making an ordinance, our second go round on that. I'm going to throw out, Nick, can you find a guy who knows that much about solar panels? Because we're obviously, we all are guessing and all this. And when you don't have anybody who's got a body of knowledge on this, which is fairly new stuff, right? And I know it's changing too, because my dad had a house 30 years ago with solar panels that 2 Purdue engineers did. And the amount of equipment, it took an entire room, small room, but in the house for this stuff. So I think even if we find what's out there today, it might be not that, there might be a direction they're going that we didn't know about. So if that's at all possible, I think it makes us that much better at trying to come up with an ordinance.
I would agree with Stuart. I'm very uncomfortable with the language that we have, particularly in G as it stands now, because I don't know what we're dealing with.
I don't see.
I don't know how you would define size.
Yeah.
Permitted size on the side of the house when we don't even know what the equipment is.
Yeah.
Great point.
Good point.
So I think this is one we should
come back to.
Yeah, I don't think this is ready for a public hearing.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It seems like we, with a little bit of professional input and some little research on Nick's part, we could probably make quick work of this next time we see it.
Well, let's find out who in town has done these, because some of them have been done really well.
Right.
I mean, really well.
Would somebody from a DTE who is impartial on this be good, or is there a body of engineering that maybe somebody at Wayne State would know? Or, I mean, I hate to get a vendor always because there's not as impartial perhaps, but if that's what we have to do.
Okay.
I'm certainly no expert on this, but I don't think DTE would be the right place, because the reason for having batteries is because the system was that you had these panels to feed back power back into the grid, and then that stopped or has slowed down or has become less financially.
If we pick DTE, the people in Torrey would recall all of us.
And DTE has not really been wanting to move forward with alternative energy sources. They're not exactly-
There you go.
Thank you, Jana, for putting it into plain English. Well said.
Nick,
All right. So,
Nick, tomorrow I'm actually going to be on the site that I was describing that has the giant battery. And I can get some information. I can email you
Great.
some information who you might be able to help us and
find a person.
answer some questions.
Great.
Thank you.
Bert can find him.
I can find them.
All right. Well, Nick, is that pretty clear what we think we need to move this forward?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Ancillary equipment.
All right. I will go to the public, even though there's no one here. I would just ask, is there anyone not on the board looking to make a comment? And I see no one, so we'll bring it back. All right. Let's bring this back as soon as you get some more info, Nick. Thank you. Good work.
Thanks.
Moving along, miscellaneous business communications. Any administrative approvals to discuss, Jana?
No. Oh, yes. Nick has one, actually.
Oh,
Nick's the man of the night.
It's my show tonight, kids.
It's fantastic.
Welcome to the Nick Show. So this one's simple. I'm going to share my screen and show you a little bit. This is the building at 266 Elm Street. The long brick building. It's got the Pilates method out front on Elm.
Yeah.
It's kind of along that alley. It's got a parking lot along the side of the building.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah.
So they've got this is the existing patio back there. What they would like to do is rip out everything back here except for the fence posts and replace it with a new fence, wood fence. It'll just be a different design, and exposed aggregate with some planters. And I'll switch to the plan here. It's a little rough. Do not strain your eyes, but this is the area of the fence, the dashed line. The exposed ag is proposed to go all the way to that fence. So you'll see here there's some landscaped area here that they would be removing, which is why I brought it to you, because they are technically a downgrade when you remove landscaping.
that's such an attractive landscaping piece. Right?
Yeah, it is. It's
Yeah. So he plans to replace that landscaping with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 planters. So he still wants to green the space up. Just for staff, it's a staff lounge area for lunch and whatnot. He'll have tables out there.
Nick, is the current fence 6 foot?
No, doesn't look like it.
No.
They're going to be reusing those existing poles, so I do not have on the application if they're going to go 6 feet.
It was on the design now. Proposed 6 foot cedar fence.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So,
more privacy.
so no, that is. I think that's more of a 4 foot.
The existing.
Yeah.
Board, any concerns?
No.
No.
Nope.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Jana, the agenda for August 12th, our next meeting.
August 12th will be our kickoff of the master plan draft review. So we'll be starting on that again.
Oh.
Fantastic. So, all of the process that we had talked about previously and packages and all of this is going to get all pulled together and okay.
Yes.
Very good.
Very good. Mr. Williams.
2 questions. Do we know what the governor's policy is and what the city's policy is on virtual meetings? Is this going to be a virtual meeting in August?
It will be a virtual meeting. They've been extended now. The governor did pass a new executive order, this time tying it to the state of emergency in the state. So at this point, that is, I believe, through August 28th, if I'm not mistaken, but it's definitely past August the 12th. And then the new executive order says that you can do virtual meetings through the state of emergency and 28 days after the state of emergency is declared to be ended. So that for the purposes of planning meetings in the future, if you know the state of emergency is going to end, you can do virtual meetings for 28 days past that. So we're at least looking at August and most of September virtual meetings at this point.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then under other business, I have a question.
Yeah, Mr. Williams, go for it.
What happened Monday night on the hearing on the rezoning?
On the rezoning, it was denied 5-1 vote. One commissioner was recused.
Okay.
Okay.
The church, the Lutheran church at 1800 West Maple, was approved.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other business before the board?
You didn't break your record.
I did not break my record, but I blame Bert for that.
You're pretty close. You're pretty close.
I'm good with blaming Bert.
All right. So with that, I will thank you all. Thank you for coming, and we will meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Nick. Well done.
Well done, everyone. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a good night.